Hi everybody, we'll just give it a minute as people are joining. So we've got quite a lot joining live as we go along.
Okay.
So as you're coming in, just make sure that you pop your mics onto mute. It's up to you if you want to have the video on or not. If all of our speakers can have their videos on, that'd be helpful. It will be recorded, so it's your call around the videos. So we'll just wait for a few more people to join us in.
Sarah, would someone be driving my slides or?
Yes. Yeah, Lauren's going to drive for you.
I'm not a diva, I promise.
No, it's much smoother, isn't it, when that happens? So as soon as we're ready, we will start recording.
Yeah, that's already in hand, Sarah. The recording's going.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lauren.
That's okay.
It's a beauty being able to edit the start bit off the one that goes on the YouTube afterwards, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, should we make a start then? So welcome everybody to the Spotlight session today. My name's Dr. Sarah Bant and I'm Head of Healthcare Science Transformation in Health Education Improvement Wales. And we're delighted to be running this Spotlight session on equivalence. Now, equivalence is a really major part of our career pathway now in healthcare science. It's what enables us to be able to start at any band, at any level of the career, and actually be able to move through all the way to consultant if we wish so, and beyond possibly. So it now means that if you join as an assistant or an associate at band 3 or band 4 in our profession, we can actually move all the way through the career without having to stop and go back to university for a number of years and come and find a job to come back in again. So it's part of the vision of modernising scientific careers, and it's part of our Made in Wales approach that we're trying to set up across all the professions in NHS Wales. We're delighted today to have with us Lynn Smith from the Academy for Healthcare Science, who's going to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the STP equivalence. And then we've got a couple of other people talking on the 2 other levels of equivalence, that at practitioner level and that at the higher specialist scientist level as well. So hopefully by the end of the session, you'll have a little bit of information as to what equivalence is about at the 3 different levels in healthcare science and some of the detail as to practically what that means. Just wanted to quickly say that in addition to this physically being available, there's also funding available for this too. So every April, there's a pot of money that's available for you to apply to. It's available across all healthcare science in Wales and at whichever level that you're wishing to apply for equivalence for. So that can cover your equivalence fee, but also before that point, any training or education or development that you need, that you've looked at the portfolio needs and you've seen some gaps and you want to actually progress in some areas and need some funding for that. So that's something that we'll be able to promote out. So if you join up to the Healthcare Science Cymru newsletter, that's something that we'll make sure that we're sharing when that information is available for you. So first of all, absolutely delighted to have Lynn with us today, and I'll pass over to you, Lynn.
Thank you. So I'll go straight to the first slide because this is the most important slide of all, if you don't mind moving it on. The first slide it's wonderful, this slide. It says everything about healthcare science and what's so important, and you're so lucky in Wales having this support and this network. It's wonderful. So I'll do my bit, and if anyone wants any help at all in terms of equivalence, you're very welcome to email the Academy, and we can give either sessions like this or we can give one-to-ones if need be. If it gets a bit overwhelming, we might have to change the tack slightly, but the support's there if you need it. But from this slide, it says everything that makes you proud to be a healthcare scientist. So the next slide is talking about equivalence as you probably all know, equivalence is it exists when the outcome of two processes are directly comparable, or the paths to achieving them can be completely different. It's when it shows to exist between new qualifications or experience, and it means that further education is not necessary. And equivalence provides the important pathway to registration as a clinical scientist through the academy. So the next slide shows some things that you should consider. So take a moment to consider with STP. Look at the STP curriculum. We don't assess against the curriculum as such, we assess against the learning outcomes, but you should know what the curriculum is appropriate to your discipline. Think about your evidence and you look at it by domain and then by the standards. And the evidence has to be high quality, it has to be reflective, it has to be show the assessors it's you that's done this and it's showing your competency and your experience and skills. Talk about your job to anyone and anyone. Show your portfolio to everybody. Well, not to everyone. I'm sure you want to keep it to yourself more importantly, but it's your portfolio, it's your experience and your career in this document. And if you want to get more from it, it's better to let somebody else give you some feedback before you actually submit it. Read the guidance for the applicants on the Academy website. Get to know what the GSP standards are for 2021. They have changed. And jot down your ideas on the mapping document. And so it gives you ideas of gaps that you might have to fill and look for experiences so that the mapping document is complete and your portfolio is ready to upload. So the process in a nutshell is initial application. You have 6 months to actually, if you go on to the next slide, sorry, I should have said, completing this initial application, submitting a portfolio, and then there's a summary mapping template and the evidence. The evidence is so important. If you say you've done something, you have to evidence it. If you haven't evidenced it, it effectively hasn't happened. So make sure your evidence is high quality and shows you're the person that's actually had this experience. Attend an interview. The interview has 3 assessors, a clinical, a specialist and a lay assessor. And so all this detail is in the guidance for applicants. And on the next slide, it's the things that you'll have to consider with GSP. So when you're demonstrating that you meet the standards of GSP, you're putting the patient at the centre of everything. That is the whole point of all this. We're making our role safe for the public. You've undertaken adequate supervised training, comparable to a clinical scientist. You've got the knowledge and skills of someone who's been through the programme. You've applied your skills, your knowledge into this clinical setting, and you can reflect on your training and how you've learnt and practiced and gone through all this process. And you're aware of all the legislation that's involved in healthcare environments. So important. So the next slide, if I can get mine, is what is GSP. So I'm going to skip some of this because you can always read through this, and GSP is the same for everyone. I don't want to go harp on about things you'll have seen before. But it forms the standards and values you must meet and throughout your career, whether you're an apprentice, whether you're a practitioner, scientist or consultant. GSP forms our standards. And the purpose of GSP is to underpin patients' receipt of safe and excellent clinical service. And that's the key thing for us, the patient. So in terms on the next slide, it talks about, once again, the patient being the centre of all our practice. it gives greater clarity, the new GSP, because the GSP changed in 2021 to become much more readable, much more doable, because there's less repetition, and the standards have been reduced from 90 to 64. So anyone submitting this year on the 2021 standards, you'll notice that there's less duplication and there's headings that help for greater clarity. And the style of language has changed. This is so important because if you think previously, we'd say make the patient your prime concern, or words to that effect. For somebody that works in biochemistry or in a non-facing role, the worry would be that what is the patient? How do I give all this evidence? And so the key thing now is the side headings point you into sort of evidence and the sort of summary experience that you give to be able to explain what your job role is. So the GSP is more sensible and more succinct now. And what's not changed on the next slide is that the 5 domains have stayed the same, and it aligns with all the key statutory documents that are part of the process. So I'll get on to the nitty-gritty about the questions that people ask about equivalence. And some of these questions were raised in Scotland, so it was the Scottish Medical Physics Group. But I'll go through them and try and pick the ones that are most relevant for you. But they'll all be on this PowerPoint, and you've got those for reference. But one of the questions is, one of the last competencies in the leadership was celebrating team success. So people were asking, how on earth are you going to actually give that sort of experience, give the evidence, etc. It seems vague. So if you look on the next slide, sorry, I keep forgetting to move the slides on. But this question from this applicant, they wanted to know about, it was vagueness, could they give feedback, could they give reviews? And on the next slide, everything that this person said, yes, all those suggestions were fine. It can be patient feedback, it can be critical reflection, really important. Any reflection is important. Witness statements because somebody signed it. Emails about your involvement, and don't forget to ask the sender because that's important as well. The emails support your involvement, but it's the high quality reflective statements that make the difference. On the next slide, you'll see a question about a bit of confusion about referring patients. So this person in ionising radiation felt that it won't be GSP is discipline wide, and it wouldn't be applicable to somebody in biochemistry. On the next slide, it tells you everything, because referral is an official sending of it's an act of sending someone to a person or authority that's qualified to deal with them, and it requires a process or an SOP or a protocol. So those are the things that are put in place so you can refer, and they're the things that you can give as evidence. But for somebody that works in biochemistry or a life science non-facing role, or someone that works in bioinformatics, what you're doing is actually referring onwards. If you feel that data, that histology sample, that piece of equipment, or whatever it is, needs referring on to someone else, you have that ability to do it. And that's the sort of thing that's a referral. And you can evidence this, and that is part of the clinical scientist process. On the next slide, it's what is met. Someone's asked about what is met or evidence. Does that mean you can meet a competency and not have to provide evidence? So that's a good one. So on the next slide, it actually describes in detail, you meet a standard. You meet a standard in the requirements of the GSP. So that could be something to do with the trust or your professional body or government. So you provide the evidence in a letter or a certificate, say for UCAS or for accreditation, the BS 70000, etc. So all these things are saying that you performed a quality assurance process or were involved in it. If you demonstrate or achieve a competency, and that's where you provide support or evidence to show that you've applied this experience and your knowledge to become the healthcare scientist that you are. So evidence would be witness statements, references, summaries of logbooks. So I think DOPS, CBDs and case studies, critical reflection. We keep going about critical reflection all the time. So important. So the next question, they like to challenge me in Scotland. Do you have to address every standard in every domain? Yes, you do. So on the next slide, it confirms that you must address every standard. But the good thing is you can use the same piece of evidence in various places to show that you've met the standard. So a good, strong piece of evidence, say you led the IQIPS or the UCAS accreditation process, it ticks almost every box. So that's perfect. If you were delegated to, you're working in a UCAS accredited department, you can show what the evidence of how you contributed to that process. So there's lots of ways that you can give this information and the sorts of evidence that you should be providing. So the next slide, why do I have to have an interview? Everyone asks this. And the argument people give is, I've been doing this job for so long, I'm really well recognised, etc. But it's HCPC requirements to have a two-part process. So the Academy, doesn't have a choice, but the important thing is the interview's there to confirm the knowledge of that applicant and the statements that they make are the evidence produced are consistent with the applicants at the interview. And it's so important because it could be that that someone else has produced that portfolio. Very rare. But the confidence there is for the public that we've achieved what HCP have required to become regulated, and that's important. Scottish side of things gave me quite a lot of grief. They were fantastic, some of the questions. So if on the next slide, let's have a look. Another question we've got, what type of evidence should I include in my portfolio? So the next slide gives you some suggestions. All these are types of evidence that you could include in your portfolio. But whatever you do, give high quality reflective evidence on any of this. If you produce a certificate of attending a meeting, it only tells us that you arrived there. It doesn't tell us that you learned. And the important thing is if you go to a meeting and you gave a presentation or undertook a workshop or gave a presentation and you have evidence of the slides, etc., or you chaired a meeting, that's the sort of thing that is good evidence of a clinical scientist. So all these are suggested evidence for your portfolio, and that will help the assessor see that you are a clinical scientist. So the next slide is evidence continued. It goes on. So contributing to or leading research. Now that's a wonderful thing to be able to do and confirm that you're a clinical scientist, but research at that level isn't required. Research is more of a broad thing. It's about involvement in process. So if you mentor an STP student, if you are involved in quality assurance, if you're involved in audits, routine audits every day, that is the sort of thing that can be given in the research, innovation and service development domain. And that's important because some people get very hung up about research. So be aware that you're meeting a learning outcome of the STP programme. You are not required higher than that, but if you've got a PhD, if you're leading research, then it's good evidence to put in your portfolio. So see your CV, appraisal, 360-degree feedback's fantastic because you get the opinion of others. Don't put it in if it's too familiar and it's your best friend giving the feedback, because somebody will soon sort of switch on to that one if it's very familiar. You need to give feedback that's demonstrate that you're working as a clinical scientist, that you're providing leadership, that you're giving the sort of experience to others that would be expected. And effective resource management, again, that is part of your role about saving the NHS money, about providing services and in the correct way. So on the next slide, how should I structure my portfolio? This is really important, and it's so important for an assessor. So I can say this on the behalf of all assessors that will be looking at a portfolio. Is you structure your portfolio, look at the guidance, structure it so logically. So you write your summary, you write your statement, so write it in paragraphs, number the paragraphs so that it's logically presented, that there's no patient identifiers anywhere in the portfolio, but you logically present it as paragraphs with the evidence referenced, and then on the mapping document you put where the evidence is. For example, paragraph 1, appendix 2, 5 and 7, and the assessor can easily find this evidence and can look through your portfolio logically. So label them, make sure that you're using the right mapping document. You can use your evidence more than once, use strong evidence, and get a critical reflection. Again, we keep harping about that, but if you say you're doing something and someone else confirms that they understand what you do every day, then you can ask your colleagues for their opinion about what you do and how you can adjust your statement to reflect that. So strong evidence is key for all this. On the next slide, watch for patient identifiers. I've said it before, it happens all the time. Watch your word count. Make everything that you say have an impact on the assessor. Evidence it and map it. If you don't evidence it, it's not happened. So it's so important. And your portfolio reflects your career. So you want to make sure everything you put in is exactly what you've done and that you're proud of. So the stronger the evidence, the less you need to confirm to the assessor that you've achieved a competence. And you can use good evidence multiple times and across the domains if appropriate. The evidence is there for support and for advice. So sorry, the academy. So we are there. We're not there as just as judge and jury. We are there to help you go through the process. We're there to make sure that you are safe for the public, that you're confirming to yourself and everyone else that you are at the level of a clinical scientist. So that's the key thing for equivalence. The next slide, I might have rambled on quickly. Interview advice. Strong portfolio means that you've always, when you're at an interview, it trips off the tongue. You've written that portfolio, you've seen the portfolio numerous times. So it's there to confirm the evidence. So the strong portfolio means that you'll have a strong interview. So don't think the interview's a trial. It's about confirming you match the portfolio itself. If you've achieved an outcome 1, which means that you've got a good portfolio and there are areas that need confirming and experiences that are required, then you may get feedback just to help you at your interview, to make you ready for the interview. We're not making it easy for you. We're making sure that you have the evidence there, you have the experience, so that when you're at interview, you can answer the questions according to your portfolio. The interview has 2 questions per domain, and in your specialist area, that's written by a specialist assessor. And relax, the interview is about you, so it's so important. Please don't think it's a trial. All interviews are scary things anyway, but we're not there to make it a trial. It's about you demonstrating to us that you meet the standard. And if you've got through your portfolio, through an outcome 1, then your interview shouldn't be a trial at all. So the next slide. Good luck. I hope I'm on time. And if obviously I've gone through questions and I can't answer them all at once, so I'm going to go through all the things in chat and answer your questions, and then I'll send them to Sarah so that she can send them on to you. So hopefully we can keep this meeting to time and get everybody's questions answered. So good luck, and you've worked so hard, so you show everyone that you've met the standards. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. That's so helpful and some brilliant detail in there. There's just one thing I wanted to pick up out of the questions that have been raised, which is about evidence being time limited. So as long as people are putting in some really good, strong narrative in there around their reflections, can they use something that they've done quite a few years ago, especially as the last couple of years have been so challenging with the pandemic?
Absolutely. Yes, they have been challenging, and including what's happened in this 2 years is pertinent to what's happened, even if it's not part of your normal role. But yes, it's part of you. Your portfolio is the build-up to you. The evidence that you provide shows you're at a clinical scientist level. So if you're putting experience of a number of years ago, you can describe it, but you've got to remember that it should be the clinical scientist level that you're putting in, not experience as a junior member of staff.
Thank you, Lynn. That's fantastic. So
No
do you
problem.
have an email address that people can contact your equivalence team on if they do have queries?
Absolutely. It's on the last slide. There's Elaine's and myself and Marcia. You're very, very welcome to email me. If you go through Marcia, she will direct it straight to me, but sometimes going through Marcia helps sort of feed things through evenly. So hopefully you'll get answers to your questions, but I'm more than happy that you email.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Lynn. There's
No
been some
problem.
really interesting things picked up in the chat. We'll pop those email addresses into the chat for the people present today, but also it means that people that are accessing the recording afterwards will put it underneath on the recording so that people can
smashing.
So
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
No problem.
So that's given us a really good overview of the STP equivalence level. We've now got 2 recorded presentations that to just talk us through what it means to do the PTP equivalence level, to go from an associate or an assistant level up to a practitioner, and then subsequently what the higher level means, with some experiences from individuals that have done it themselves as well. So the first recording that we're going to show now is from Joshua Williams, who's an associate practitioner in audiology in North Wales. So he has been working towards his PTP equivalence, and he's now been successful in achieving that. And he's produced a recording for us, just 5 minutes, of his experiences with that.
My name is Josh Williams, and I'm a newly qualified audiologist from Glenclwyd, and I've recently registered with the Academy of Healthcare Science. Today I've just been asked to do a quick chat just about kind of my routes into audiology, as it has differed slightly than a standard sort of 3-year degree. So my background is that I've done a sports science degree and I've done a master's in nutrition. And my sort of passion and kind of inspiration to join audiology was through my uncle. Now my uncle was the first person in Wales to have the cochlear implant done. And from a young age, not really kind of understanding what this kind of device was on my uncle's head, that really kind of helped him here. But certainly now being in audiology, I understand quite plainly, the benefits of what the cochlear implant did, certainly for my uncle Chris. And this is kind of really why I wanted to kind of explore the area of audiology. Like I said, I've already got a degree and a master's in different subjects, and this was really a great basis really for me to get on to the fast track government scheme. Now, the fast track government scheme was, like I say, a fast track course that got you to a band 4 level, and that was a 2-year course that intertwined modules at Swansea University and then in-house training at Glenclwyd. Now, I really enjoyed this type of style because it meant that we spent an awful lot of time in the hospital rather than away at university. And this is where I really kind of managed to develop my skills, learning how to talk to people or communicate to people with hearing losses. Also, as well, the staff at Glenclwyd were amazing, and I was able to kind of learn from them and learning how to do all the tests really. So that part was absolutely fantastic. Now, after the 2 years, I then managed to secure a job as a band 4 as an associate audiologist, and then the next part then was to complete the bridging modules. Excuse me. Now, the bridging modules are designed to bridge the gap then from your band 4 to your band 5 to kind of fill in all the sort of knowledge and experience and competencies that need to be completed in order to hit that kind of, or to demonstrate that understanding and knowledge of a band 5. After that, it was then time to submit or create a portfolio with the Academy of Healthcare Science. Now, that was challenging, to say the least, because when I was kind of putting together the portfolio, that was when COVID decided to show up. So initially, it was a bit of a shock, thinking, how am I going to get this done? How am I going to get certain competencies signed off? Because obviously we're not seeing patients. But really, in the end, it was a bit of a blessing in disguise, because all of a sudden I just had this abundance of free time, which meant that I could properly sit down, look at the different types of evidence that was required, and really kind of structure the portfolio. Initially, like I say, it was daunting. There was some guidance from the Academy of Healthcare Science, but the problem was it was all to do with the STP, so not a lot of information on PTP. Another problem was that no one else had done it before, so again, I couldn't refer to anything, and also as well, knowing how much evidence to put in the portfolio for what standard. But as time went on and restrictions started to become lifted, I was able to really kind of find my feet and really kind of gather those different bits of evidence in terms of, getting supervisory reports, writing reflections on more patients, and just finding other meaningful bits of evidence. Now, the other daunting bit was, in the end, the portfolio turned out to be 30,000 words and 100 pages, which was right on the limit. I had no idea if it was going to pass or not. So the idea was just kind of submit it, see how it goes, and then obviously if it requires more evidence or things needed to be altered, then that's what I would have done. However, I was quite fortunate that the portfolio went through first time. Now, that wouldn't have happened, like I say, if it hadn't been maybe for COVID and the extra time. But more importantly, it wouldn't have happened without the amazing staff at Glenclwyd. Now, certainly everyone there, from all my supervisors to anyone really who kind of sat in and taught me all the way from when I first started the course, when I had no audiological experience whatsoever. So yeah, a big thank you to all the Glenclwyd staff there, because they've been absolutely amazing. Also as well, if anyone's thinking about going into audiology, even if they have no audiological experience, but they do have a science degree or university qualification, I would strongly consider looking at this course, because it's absolutely fantastic. And I've just had nothing but a blast all the way through for the last 3 years. So that's just a little bit about me, and about kind of my roots into audiology and how I became registered. All right, thanks for your time. Bye.
Thank you, Joshua. That's fantastic. So we're going to go straight over to Kate Bryant now, who we have live with us in the room, but also Kate's put a little recording together for us on the higher specialist scientific equivalence and her experiences with this, and also a bit of information about what that means. But also we'll be able to quickly go to Kate for a question at the end if we so wish. So thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
So Kate, as we've got you in the room then, so what was your experience of doing the HSSE? Was it a straightforward process, or like Josh has said, was there a challenge in pulling all this together?
Yeah, so for me, it was a bit of a shot in the dark. So I did it back in 2017, and at the time, I don't think anybody else had really gone through the process. There's still now only about 7 or 8 in my field on the register. So yeah, it's a little bit of a shot in the dark. The guidance notes on the Academy's website were useful, but they weren't sort of specific to the stage 1, as I talk a little bit about in my talk. There's a lot of information if you need to put a portfolio in, but not a lot of information regarding the stage 1 application. So I think because of that, my application was a lot longer perhaps than it needed to be. But yeah, I mean, the process was sort of gathering all the information together and putting it into essentially, I almost did a.
Can you give me a thumbs up?
Specialist scientific equivalence.
Fab.
Back in 2017. So I'm going to give you an overview of the HSS training and the equivalence route. There are around 40 different healthcare science disciplines in the NHS, and in 2012, under the Modernising Scientific Careers transformation, they were brought together under the same career and training pathways. So I'm talking to you today about the higher specialist scientific training. So this is for registered clinical scientists and training to become a consultant clinical scientist. So there's a 5-year doctorate training route or equivalence, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. And the clinical scientist career and the higher specialist scientific training is designed to produce a doctorate level workforce with consultant clinical scientists comparable to our medically qualified consultants. It's a 5-year taught doctorate programme incorporating leadership and research and development alongside clinical work-based competencies. And the clinical scientist career structure reflects the Modernising Scientific Careers structure, which is adopted by the Department of Health in England and Welsh Government here in Wales. And The training standards for modernising scientific careers are consistent with those of the HCPC and the GMC for medical training. And the HSST curricula were developed through medical colleges in consultation with scientific professional bodies and is aimed at training senior scientists to deliver an equivalent standard of scientific specialist care to that of our medically qualified consultant colleagues. This slide demonstrates a typical structure for the HSCT programme. So it's a 5-year programme combining generic modules, specialist modules, leadership, research and development. So the Academy of Healthcare Science established an equivalence process whereby we can show parity between the outcomes of the HSS training programme and relevant pre-existing knowledge, skills and experience in healthcare science. So where a scientist already has an equivalent level qualification and experience and skills at doctorate level, then it shouldn't be necessary to repeat that via a formal training programme. We should be able to demonstrate parity to that. Equivalence applicants were assessed against the Academy's HSS standards of proficiency within the 5 domains of good scientific practice, so professional, scientific, clinical, R&D and clinical leadership. Eligibility for the HSS equivalent, so applicants need to be HCPC registered clinical scientist and demonstrate a sort of ream of professional experience at an appropriate level, usually for at least 5 years. Now, applicants don't need to possess a PhD or doctorate level qualification, but they must demonstrate that they have a comparable level of expertise and achievement to the HSS training programme. This slide illustrates the process for equivalence applications. So the stage 1 and stage 2, and I'm going to take you through the different parts of the process in the slides following. For the stage 1 submission, applicants have to provide a mapping summary. A template for this is provided, and I'll run through this in a moment. They need to provide a job description and personal specification, a structured CV. They need to be supported by 2 professional references and also provide their qualification certificates. The application fee is around £280. Also need to provide a current DBS certificate and a passport photo. And there's a basic administration check on this initial submission of information before the application is assigned to an assessment panel. All equivalence applications are submitted and processed via an online portal on the Academy's website. So applicants need to register on the website and set up a personal profile and then upload the different elements of their application. The application can be edited until it's submitted. Once it's submitted, then further changes can't be made. There's email confirmations and updates throughout the application process. So it's a sort of an automated system. So this is an example of the summary mapping template for stage 1. So evidence has to be provided for each of the 5 domains of good scientific practice and the standards of proficiency within each of those domains. So professional practice, scientific practice, clinical practice, research and development and clinical leadership. Alongside the mapping template, applicants need to provide a structured CV, which should demonstrate the applicant's knowledge, skills, and how their experience meets the HSS standards of proficiency. It needs to include a summary of career to date with a word count of 1,500 words, with explicit reference to how the 5 domains of good scientific practice have been met, and then with additional short paragraphs after each section, reinforcing how experience gained and the evidence provided aligns with the standards of practice. And following the initial summary, other sections can be included on leadership, training, finance or budgetary responsibility, clinical leadership, research and development, etc. The application is reviewed by the panel and they will award one of three outcomes. So the first outcome would be that equivalence has been demonstrated and the applicant will be awarded the certificate of equivalence. Outcome 2 is that they may be able to demonstrate equivalence but that further evidence is required. Or outcome 3 is that the applicant hasn't demonstrated equivalence with the training programme. If outcome 2 is awarded, applicants need to provide a further, more detailed mapping template and a portfolio of evidence which can be up to 200 pages. The application then goes for further review by the panel. Stage 2 again has three possible outcomes. So outcome 1 is equivalence is met. Outcome 2 may be where it's partially met, but there are some gaps and the applicant will be directed to undertake specific actions to address specific missing outcomes. Or outcome 3 is that they're not able to demonstrate equivalence and they'll be directed to undertake a full training programme. The assessment panel recommendation is reviewed by a ratification panel, and then once the applicant is notified, they have 28 days to appeal. Once the HSS Certificate of Equivalence is awarded, it enables the candidate to register on the Higher Specialist Scientific Register, and again it's a further online application to join the register. The initial registration is covered in the application fee, and then it's an annual fee of around £50 to maintain the registration. So I thought I'd just provide my own personal experience of undergoing the HSS equivalent. So I began the stage 1 application in around October 2017. It took me a couple of months to provide the CV, complete the template, upload certificates, etc. I had to apply for a DBS as I didn't have a current one, and that took about 2 to 3 weeks turnaround to obtain that. So I submitted at the beginning of November and had email confirmation, so I felt the communication was very good through the process. Following the initial admin check, I had an email confirmation saying that there was an 8-week turnaround for the Academy's assessment panel to assess and provide me with an outcome. So it was around January time that I would hear. So I had the stage 1 outcome confirmed by email in mid-January via email as promised. And I had the certificate of equivalence awarded. The certificate was emailed to me, and then I received a hard copy in the post as well. It was then an online application to join the register via my AHCS account and upload my certificate. It was then around another 2 weeks for the Academy to process the application and for my name to appear on the register. So for myself, the initial application was a bit of a stab in the dark, as I didn't have many colleagues who'd previously gone through the process. I did find the guidelines a little bit unclear and vague in places, and I did find the structured CV a little challenging within the word count of 1,500 words. There was also no real guidance as to the amount of or type of evidence that should be provided for stage 1. There's detailed guidance and examples provided for stage 2, but no real guidance for stage 1. So I submitted about 25 documents, which was possibly overkill because it was about sort of 90 pages long in the end. But I felt it better to provide more than less. So I sort of collated documents, certificates, policies, papers, reports, meeting minutes already undertaken via my routine work. So all the work had been done as part of my routine job role. So there was no sort of additional practical work required for my submission. So the time-consuming bit, I think, was the anonymisation of all the documents was quite time-consuming, and then all the certificates needed to be scanned in and uploaded in a single file. So linking all the separate documents together and producing a PDF was a little bit time-consuming. So you definitely need access to a PDF editor and access to a scanner as well, would be my advice. Just a bit of info on the register. It was established in 2015. It's an online register held by the Academy of Healthcare Science. It's available for the public to view and search for registrants. At the moment in medical physics, there are only 8 on the register for imaging physics and 13 for radiotherapy across the UK. So they're still quite small numbers. on the register. So the question is, which route is best for applicants to take? It's HSST or Equivalence? So HSST, it's funded for 1 day a week, and it's an opportunity to attain a doctorate level qualification. It takes 5 years, so it is quite a commitment, but there's a clear career training pathway, and the formal structure of HSST may benefit and be more attractive to some candidates. So HSSE may benefit for those already holding a doctorate level qualification with existing sort of high level experience and leadership. It should be unnecessary to repeat that level training and experience to gain the registration. Equivalence is potentially a quicker process depending on experience and training level. Additional support may be required if there are any missing elements, but it's maybe a more time efficient and cost effective option than undertaking the full 5-year training route. And then looking at which route is best for departments. So HSST, the day release can be difficult to backfill, and candidates who are already at mid or higher career levels may be harder for backfill for HSST than, for example, staff who are exiting the SDP programme. So equivalence in this case may be better as a quicker process and a more time efficient and cost effective process. Staff already working or near the level required shouldn't need to retrain. And so again, equivalence may be the better option. There's often a few funded HSST places per year, whereas there's more sort of multiple opportunities for equivalence depending on the extra support that's provided. So HSS equivalence may also avoid any potential leapfrogging concerns, particularly for those mid to high career level staff. So timescales, HSST is a 5-year programme, and depending on experience, the equivalence application may only take a couple of months, depending on any additional experience necessary. So it depends on the existing staff profile within a department section as to which routes are better for a department. HSS equivalence is also cheaper, so it's, as I said, it's about £280 for the initial application, versus the cost of the doctorate and backfill costs associated with that. But equivalence may be the cheaper option, especially if HOW support is available. So you find more information available on the National School and Academy and the NHS Careers websites, and also some professional body websites as well. If anybody has any questions or would like to contact me for advice on equivalence, then please do contact me. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. That's absolutely fantastic and gives us a really good overview of what the HSS T and E are about, but also your personal experience of doing that. And I think your reflection there of being one of the early ones to go through is commonly the case, isn't it? You over prepare and you over submit just because you think, put everything in and, make the chance, but hopefully we can learn from experiences and from the process over time, so that people aren't necessarily having to do that moving forwards. Just wanted to quickly mention as well that this is it's part of the vision for modernising scientific careers and part of our vision of the healthcare science framework in Wales, that this higher scientist specialist register is appropriate for anybody wishing to work at that consultant level in Wales, and it may be that we're heading in the direction where it would be required in future for that. So it's something that if you are thinking about doing that, do get in touch with Kate or with ourselves through the programme, or directly with AHCS to get some support to see what would equivalence mean to you at that level and what would you need. We're all more than happy to support you with that. Thank you, Kate. That's fantastic. So just wanting to wrap up to say thank you so much to everybody who's presented today and who's been with us in this session. There's lots of information that's been given across to you that will be available on the recording afterwards, and we'll put all of the contact details there too. We will have a conference in the new year as well, so there'll be more opportunity to connect with people and explore this further. But fundamentally, the healthcare science programme in Wales is there to support with achieving this vision in Wales of this career pathway that somebody can go through from a band 2, 3, 4 all the way up with no ceilings in place, developing along the way in a way that suits you and is suitable for your service as well. So if you do feel that there's any blockages or anything that's not in place at the moment, we're really keen to discuss with you to understand how we can ensure that this is the case for all of our healthcare science professions, all 50 plus of them. So thank you so much for joining us today, and wish you well. And our next Spotlight session is going to be in January on the topic of leadership. So you can find details again either in the chat bar or below on how to sign up for that. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah.
Brilliant, Lynn. Thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant.
I really enjoyed it. I've got a few questions for you at some point, but obviously it's a bit difficult now, so I'll get hold of you. But thank you again.
Brilliant. No, thanks so much, Lynn. Really appreciate it.
Okay. See you anytime.
Bye then.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Lauren. Thank you for your help.
No problem at all. I'm just sorry about the little tech glitches.
Don't worry at all. The beauty of recording, we can iron it out in the recording, and nobody will ever know.
Thanks, Sarah. See you in a bit.
Thank you. Bye.